our very first story, provisional estimates from the Ghana Statistical Service shows that Ghana's economy expanded by 3.1% in 2022, 0.6% lower than 3.7% forecast by the government. This is below Ghana's average gross domestic product growth rate of 5% pre-COVID-19. It met most analysts' forecasts as the African Development Bank in January 2023 had projected that Ghana's economy will grow by 3.6%. Services sector led growth, followed by agriculture and industry, which recorded a growth rate of 0.9%. The following report has more.
Despite the slow growth, the economy expanded by more than 610 billion cedis for the year 2022. This is compared to some 400 billion cedis recorded in 2021. The 3.1% expansion of the economy was driven by gold production, fishing, information and communication, education as well as public administration, defense and social security subsectors. Addressing journalists, government statistician Professor Samuel Kobna-Enim said the slow growth rate was due to the challenges that the economy went through.
This growth rate dipped by 2.0 percentage points for the period 2021 to 2022. For the period 2021 to 2022, comparing the values of the economy, which stood at 174.6 billion and 179.9 billion, the economy grew by 3.1% between the period 2021 and 2022. From a non-oil perspective, the economy grew by 3.8%, which also indicates a slowdown of about 2.8 percentage points, as the economy grew by 6.6% between 2020 and 2021, and now saw a growth rate of 3.8% between 2021 and 2022. From a non-gold perspective, we see a much harder impact on the economy. So if you discount for the effect of the economy, in 2021, the economy grew by 7.1% from a non-gold perspective. That is, if you take away the effect of gold, the economy grew by 7.1%. Between the period 2020 and 2021, but between the period 2021 and 2022, we saw a much harder impact on the economy, where the economy grew by 2.1% between 2021 and 2022.
He admitted that the service sector continued to remain the significant contributor to the country's economic expansion.
So Ghana's economy continued to largely rely on the services sector, followed by the industry sector and the agriculture sector, which has seen its contribution hovering around a fifth of the total GDP that we have as a country. We look at this from a trend perspective, and we don't see much difference since 2013 when we rebased our GDP. The contribution of the services sector has hovered around 2/5 to half of the entire GDP, with a current value of 44.9%. It is important to indicate that this is a marginal drop given what we recorded as services sector contribution in 2021.
Meanwhile, the provisional growth rate for the last quarter of this year was 3.7%.
Well, economist and director at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, ISE, Professor Peter Quartey, has attributed the poor performance of the industry sector to high inflation and high cost of doing business in the country in 2022. Speaking on the marketplace, Professor Quartey explained that difficult economic conditions contributed to the poor performance of the industry sector.
General cost of doing business, as well as the general uncertainty in the last quarter of 2022. This IMF program, debt exchange, generally there was higher uncertainty on the market, and therefore, as investors, as industry, they couldn't plan to invest as much as they could. Demand pressures were not as high as one would have expected. So that translated into the slower growth rates that we saw. The industrialization policies were there, but of course, as a business person, if you want to produce, if you want to market your product, you also have to take cognizance of what is happening on the market. If exchange rate was depreciating quite rapidly, if the interest rate were rising, if electricity, utility tariffs, fuel prices were going up, inflation, look at how rapidly inflation kept changing. So there are a lot of market uncertainty, and as an investor, despite all the policies that government was trying to put in place. This would affect your decision to invest, to produce. And even if you produce, demand for your product can also be affected, given the general economic conditions. So, in my view, it is very much expected.
Meanwhile, the Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana has challenged the government to take the bold step in reducing the high import bills recorded in the country. Ghana's agriculture sector contributes about 10 billion cedis of import cover, a situation industry players say is a ban on the dwindling fortunes of the sector. Speaking on the back of the 4.2% agri sector's contribution to the growth of the economy, Chief Executive Officer of the Agribusiness Chamber, Anthony Morrison, says a reduction in the high import bill will further improve the agri sector's contribution to GDP.
There is a lot we can do, just as it was said in the President's State of the Nation address of trying to mitigate the 10 billion agricultural importation bill. We need to take the political will and reduce the importation bill. First, on the 1.7 billion frozen chicken importation bill, that also on the tomatoes, which is ranging about $400 million. We're also looking at fish, 1.8 billion on the fish importation bill, and the rice bill, which is also around $1.1 billion. We also import about $300 million of fruit juice, sugar, and what have you. So, and especially fat and oil, which is also around 1.3, 1.4 billion. So we need to take the political will and begin to take the critical step and make public increasing or incremental public investment into the agriculture sector. You see, when you do that, you see that the other sectors of the economy will respond because you are increasing job creation, the wealth creation, and all these people will be paying taxes. And especially, you will see an incremental upward performance in the services sector. Services sector actually, in most cases, should be performing more than double of most of the sectors because they provide, they are more of an oscillatory sector for most of the other sectors. But if they are not performing in that particular sector very well, you see that that will affect the other performances of the other economic sectors. And these are some of the things. And you see, aside the budgetary allocation or the incremental budgetary allocation, we should also be looking at investment into research, innovation, and technology, and also skills development. Okay. Because that is the only way you can guarantee people's investment, whether public or private, in the agriculture sector.
Now, the Institute of Economic Affairs has expressed worry about the repetition of past mistakes, which has made the Ghanaian economy unstable over the years. According to the economic think tank, the indiscipline in managing the country's finances has caused the high fiscal deficit and consequently high inflation and currency instability, forcing innocent Ghanaians and businesses to pay for the economic mismanagement. Here's more in this report.
In a paper on institutionalizing fiscal indiscipline and macroeconomic stability for sustained growth in Ghana, The Constitutional Pathway, lead researcher Dr. John Kwachi said, Ghana has a long history of fiscal indiscipline, and this is evident in its fiscal deficits being almost consistently higher than those of its peers in Africa. According to him, the deficits tend to escalate in election years when election-related spending are elevated. Then the country borrowed to finance the deficits and caused public debt to escalate to unsustainable levels. Ghana has been in that situation numerous times as the debt reached the first crisis situation in 2004 when it ballooned to over 100% of gross domestic product. This forced the nation to seek relief under the HIPIC initiative, which caused the debt-to-GDP ratio to drop to a sustainable level of 26% in 2006. However, Dr. Kwachi said the country returned to the culture of fiscal indiscipline thereafter, causing the debt to rise yet again. He expressed worry again that the current and past governments have not learned their mistakes after almost 20 years of HIPIC. He added that the country must do everything possible to safeguard or institutionalize fiscal discipline under the Constitution, else it will always record macroeconomic instability.
That was a Business Desk report. Now, a former Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Mark Malloch-Brown, is pushing for a decent debt restructuring deal for Ghana. The call is coming at a time when the Paris Club of Bilateral Creditors are set to begin formal debt restructuring negotiations with Ghana and possibly announce financing assurance for the country. Mr. Brown, who is currently the president of the Open Society Foundation, maintains that his proposal has been influenced by the fact that the current challenges facing Ghana are not purely due to internal factors. He's been speaking to Joy Business in Washington, D.C. on the sidelines of the just-ended IMF World Bank spring meetings.
Global level, we're trying to lock in those wins and create a kind of, and through our grantees, create a, if you like, a new narrative of, a very different way of addressing debt, rather than looking at it as a reason to cut spending and to sort of put on the straitjacket of austerity, to instead see that in some cases debt crises require more spending, not less spending, because economies have to grow their way out of the debt if they're going to be able to service it. So, it's a complete, it's a program which intends both to change the terms of the negotiation at the country level, change the terms of engagement at the global level, and change the terms of the debate at the intellectual level to, put a much more sort of, a much different economic model in place where, growth is okay. Growth is something we should be looking at rather than the austerity that, for example, Zambia now faces or Ghana may shortly face.
And also the debt sustainability initiative we launched today. How does Ghana, Kenya, Zambia benefit? I saw something to do with building their capacity. So how can...
Well, in the case of Ghana, we've been giving support to debt advisory work there, and similarly in the case of Zambia, we've been supporting a lot of groups who are in turn working with the government and with civil society in Zambia on the terms of those debt agreements. So, we're very engaged because we look at both Ghana and Zambia as, real sort of pilot cases where both countries deserve a decent deal on their debt. And we hope that by locking in that deal, it becomes the basis for other countries which may be in the queue behind them for debt restructurings to get similar or even better terms.
Now, Director of the Ghana Investment Promotion Center, Edward Ashon-Latte, has indicated that there's an entry of more investors into the country due to the ongoing IMF negotiations. According to him, Ghana's negotiations with the IMF are sending a positive signal to investors, and this is accounting for the entry of more investors into the country despite the current economic crisis. He was speaking at a municipal and district assembly investor forum.
The Ghana Investment Promotion Center held an MDA investor forum to foster a good relationship between businesses and the assemblies they operate in. The forum was under the theme, the contribution of MDAs towards making Ghana an attractive investment location. Speaking at the forum, the director of the GIPC, Edward Ashon-Latte, said Ghana remains a good destination for investments despite the economic challenges.
We all know we are going through some challenges, but government is working very hard to address this. I mean, we are constantly updated on progress made with the IMF, and for the offshore investor, the fact that the IMF is even on board gives them a lot of hope. And early this year, we had a group of Japanese investors coming in, and you know how careful. So if even in the midst of our discussions, we have a large number of them coming, it means they have seen something good, there's a potential, and following the discussions with the World Bank, they know that definitely we will come out, and they want to reposition themselves so that once things are quite clear, they can move in. So for the offshore investor, it's only natural that they wait and see what is going to happen. Others who made their plans long ago and are still confident are coming forward to register their businesses. So I must say that things look very bright for Ghana.
Senior Development Planning Officer for Kole Klote, Safa Kofume, reiterated the Accra Metropolitan Assembly's commitment to creating an enabling environment for investors to thrive in the communities.
We are looking forward to creating an enabling environment for businesses to grow, and most especially, the sustenance of businesses, because that is what brings the economic benefits we are all talking about and improvement in livelihoods. We are looking forward to having businesses connecting with us, sharing our medium-term plans with them for businesses and corporate institutions with the corporate social responsibility package to look through it and see in areas can collaborate, in which of the interventions falls in line with their plan. So at the end of the day, we have a win-win situation. The assemblies are able to, through the collaboration, implement activities within or in their medium-term plan or the annual action plan. And then institutions too are able to carry out their mandates by providing such an intervention or service, so that you don't even have duplication of interventions and waste of resources.
The GIPC, through its aftercare program, is helping investors to navigate the business environment while ensuring compliance.
The interim executives of the Association of Ghana Startups has vowed to harness and leverage on data to support the development of the small and medium enterprises. According to the team lead of the association, Solomon J, data has become an essential part of business life, driving global trade and productivity across all sectors of the economy. He spoke to Joy Business at the Ghana Startup Stakeholders Assembly.
And sought the commissioning of an interim executives for the yet to be launched Association of Ghana Startups. To this end, the interim executives have been charged to harness and leverage on data to develop the SME ecosystem. Solomon Ejay is the team lead for the Association of Ghana Startups.
So data is key. That's one of the key things we're doing, is to get to know who is a startup in this country, where are you located, what are you doing, what are your challenges, and how can we support you, or support you in all of those things. And again, if you are a DP or a funding partner, whatever institution that you are providing support to startups, where are you? What do you have to offer? And then who do you want to connect to support? To offer the support. And so we're going to create a central database of the startup ecosystem, from the startup themselves and to the other support institutions. So once you get to our system, you are able to get everything you need about startup development in the country.
The association also launched the Startup Eco magazine to showcase the gains of SMEs in the country.
Yeah, so the magazine, one of the key things that we thought of doing is to create a platform that will showcase the startups and the players and what they're doing. About visibility here. People are doing many things in their salary, but no one knows about them. So there's a quarterly magazine that we created called the Startup Eco magazine that we just launched. And so it is going to consolidate all the gains in every quarter and then publish and project it across board. So we're going to distribute free of charge the digital version and, of course, the hard copies.
The Ghana Startup Stakeholders Assembly brought together players in the ecosystem to collaborate, innovate, and invest together to compete globally.
Chief Operating Officer of People's Pension Trust, Kofi Pole, has called for intensified education to boost the expansion of pensions in the informal sector. According to him, little has been done by way of enlightening players in the informal sector about the importance of pensions. He admonished the regulator and operators to collaborate and employ the use of technology to drive the expansion of pensions. He's been speaking to Joy Business.
The other challenge is lack of education. Pension is not part of our mental calculation. And so we don't think about pension until it creeps on us. I can tell you that by the 2022-2021 NPR annual report, only 4% of the informal sector workers has any form of pension. Now, if you consider the fact that we see that 85% of the working population are in the informal sector, and only 4% has a pension. That should tell you that there's still a lot of room for improvement. And it's all basically because of education, because especially with the informal sector, there's this misconception that they don't go on retirement. Because if I own a car and I'm driving, I think that I'll drive it till that kingdom come. I forget that in my latter years, I may have waist problem, I may have eyesight problems and all that. And that is why we need to talk about pension. It's something, a discussion we need to continue talking about. Because you see, quite apart from the individual benefits of pension, the country benefits from pension funds. Because it is long-term funds, the country is able to develop using pension funds. I think it should be concerted effort. I know the corporate trustees are doing their bits. I know for a fact that NPRA have a month in which they make sure that they have programs, they educate people about it. But my challenge is that if it's a month and after the month we all go to sleep, then what happens? And that's why I say that it should be something that all the parties involved should come together. So one of the characteristics of the informal sector is that they do not earn regular income. And therefore, if you make their contribution fixed and on periodic basis, that creates a problem. However, we have crossed that line. Now what we need to do is easy accessibility. And this is where technology comes in. Because, for example, if somebody is in Tamale, the person should be able to sign on a scheme without necessarily going to the office. The person should be able to make payments without necessarily physically traveling to office to make fiscal payment. And so we need to rely on technology. Another thing that has to be done is also partnerships. How do various people in the industry or outside the industry partner to make this thing easy for people to access? I'll give you a typical example. If, for example, we have a partner with a telco, and the telco is pushing this agenda, virtually all of them have a payment platform. So the telco can come out with a code when if you want to register, sign on, you can pay through their platform. Then we are reaching out far and wide. We can easily scale up.
And that's how we end business tonight. For more business news, you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business. I'm Beverly Broohm. I leave you with international business news.